It's late now, though time has lost its shape these past few days. I'm Jake Sinclair, broadcasting on 104.6 FM from what's left of a small station outside Columbus, Ohio. The clock on the wall tells me it's 9:14 at night, but the power grid's been down for long enough that the only light in here comes from the dim glow of a battery lantern. It's cold inside the studio. Not winter cold, but the kind that comes from silence, when the hum of machines and the chatter of television sets and the buzz of neon signs are gone, and all you can hear is your own breath. The backup generator is running in the basement, but fuel is short, and I don't know how long it'll last. I'll keep broadcasting until it dies, or until I do. Pretend you've just connected to this frequency. What do you tell the world in 15 seconds? What's the last thing you saw? Smoke? Silence? Soldiers? Comment your report like we're logging every broadcast. The world ended without fire or storm. It ended with numbers on a screen, digits that turned red, graphs that went straight down, and then silence from the people who were supposed to know what to do. They called it a liquidity freeze at first, then a banking holiday. That was 9 days ago. The US dollar collapsed in less than 24 hours, dragging down everything tied to it. Markets, pensions, savings, jobs. In the space of a week, the dollar wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. ATMs stopped working. Banks locked their doors. Card readers blinked uselessly at grocery stores. People lined up at gas stations with wallets full of worthless bills. And when they couldn't get what they needed, they broke down the doors and took it. I still remember the exact moment it began to sink in. I was walking down High Street 2 mornings ago, trying to find bottled water since the city pipes had started sputtering. And I passed a man standing in the middle of the road. He was holding a $20 bill, flapping it in the air, begging anyone to give him a loaf of bread for it. Nobody even looked at him. They just kept digging through trash bags outside the storefronts, looking for anything edible. That image is stuck in my head. The green paper that once ruled the world had turned into nothing more than scraps of ink and cotton. The empire built on the dollar had died, and with it, civilization itself. The first signs were quiet. ATMs stopped spitting out cash. Then the card systems went dark. You'd walk into a gas station, and the clerk would shrug and point to a handwritten sign that said, "Cash only." Then, within hours, even that didn't matter. Cash meant nothing. By the end of the day, people were trying to trade batteries, canned food, cigarettes, things you could hold in your hand, things you could eat or burn. Old-timers with wood stoves suddenly became the smartest people on the block. Kids who had nothing but phones and sneakers learned real fast that neither of those could buy food. Governments tried to calm everyone. I remember the president's address, shaky voice, promising that emergency measures were in place, that the Treasury and the Federal Reserve were working around the clock. They always say that. But then the feed cut out mid-sentence. Whether it was a power failure or a deliberate blackout, no one knows. What I do know is that the silence afterward was worse than anything he could have said. When leaders go dark, people know they're on their own. Hospitals were the first to fall. Not because doctors gave up, but because supply chains did. Insulin needs refrigeration. Dialysis needs machines that run on power. Surgeries need sterile equipment. Within days, generators failed or were stripped for fuel. People started dying in waiting rooms, and no one came to pick up the bodies. I got an email, back when the internet was still sputtering, from a nurse at Riverside who said she watched parents screaming as their child slipped away, not because of injury, not because of disease, but because the machines they relied on had gone silent. Imagine that. Not even war. just the absence of numbers in a bank account. Now, the streets are filled with firelight at night. I can see it from the window of the station. Burning trash barrels, sometimes whole buildings. Martial law was declared 3 days ago, but the soldiers that were sent in either deserted or joined the crowds. Food trucks were hijacked before they reached distribution centers. Gas stations have been gutted. Grocery stores are stripped down to bare metal shelves. The suburbs are emptying as families crowd into the cities, hoping for protection. But there's nothing here but more hungry mouths. Out in the countryside, some towns are walling themselves off, turning back strangers at gunpoint. Survival doesn't leave room for sympathy. I've been hearing whispers, too, from old contacts and ham operators scattered across the states. There's talk of foreign currencies being smuggled across borders, but nothing holds value when trade is frozen. Gold and silver? Maybe. But try buying antibiotics with a gold coin. Try feeding your child with a silver ring. No, what people want now are things that keep you alive. Food, medicine, clean water, fuel. Barter is back, and the rules are being rewritten every hour. They say Europe is collapsing just as fast. The euro couldn't withstand the shock of the dollar imploding. London markets froze. German factories stopped shipping. And from what little I've heard, the shelves there are as bare as they are here. Global trade isn't limping, it's dead. Ships sit idle in ports because no one knows what to pay or how to pay. Containers full of food and medicine are rotting just miles from starving cities because there's no functioning system to move them. Humanity built its world on trust in paper promises, and when the paper burned, the promises went with it. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep this up. The generator's tank is nearly half empty, and fuel is harder to find than food. But as long as I can, I'll be here, broadcasting to whoever still has a radio. Maybe I'm just speaking into static, but maybe someone out there is listening, clutching an old radio, praying for a human voice. If you can hear me, you're not alone. The world is crumbling, but the world is still here. And so are we. Stay alive however you can. I'll keep talking as long as I have breath and power. This is Jake Sinclair on 104.6 FM. You're still here, and so am I. It's the 10th day since the crash, though time feels stretched and bent, each hour dragging like a weight. The city outside the studio isn't really a city anymore. It's something else. Something that looks the same in daylight but feels hollow, like the skin of a place without its pulse. The streets aren't alive with cars or chatter. They're lined with shadows of people moving slow, searching, clutching bags or carts filled with whatever they could salvage. The skyline hasn't changed, but the hum has gone. No neon, no traffic lights, no glow from office windows. Just silence broken by shouts, breaking glass, and sometimes the sharp crack of gunfire echoing in the distance. When the banks first froze, I thought it would be like 2008. Some temporary panic followed by bailouts, some new plan to stabilize everything. That's what they always promised back then, that no matter how bad it got, there were tools to keep the system afloat. This time, there were no tools. The money just dissolved. Overnight, balances disappeared, accounts locked, and governments shrugged with empty hands. I saw people pounding on bank doors, holding up their phones with screenshots of their savings accounts, as if begging for them to be real again. Nobody inside the branches answered. By the next day, the windows were shattered and desks were overturned. I can tell you, nothing reveals how thin civilization is like the sound of breaking glass when people finally accept that rules are gone. That first night, I heard it over and over, rolling down the streets like dominoes, Pharmacies, liquor stores, pawn shops. Not mobs at first, just families, neighbors, people who looked like they'd never done anything illegal in their lives. You could see the panic in their eyes, the way their hands shook as they filled bags with whatever they thought might matter tomorrow. By the third night, it wasn't panic anymore. It was hunger. And hunger doesn't leave room for hesitation. A friend of mine, he was a truck driver, ran routes from Columbus up through Detroit, told me what tipped him off that things weren't coming back. It wasn't the news, wasn't even the markets. It was when his company told him to leave the trucks where they were. No deliveries, no fuel cards, no pay. Just stop and walk away. That was day 2. He said there were already lines of trucks parked on the highway shoulders, loaded with food, medicine, supplies, drivers standing around in confusion, waiting for orders that never came. By the time some figured out they could at least drive their rigs home, the roads were jammed, and within hours, mobs were raiding the trailers. Imagine that. Entire supply lines abandoned on the asphalt, the veins of America's economy clotted all at once. Hospitals didn't collapse in a single moment, but they unraveled quick. Without electronic records, without supply shipments, they turned into shelters for the sick, rather than places of healing. I heard from a nurse out of Cleveland who said they were forced to tell patients to go home, even the critical ones, because there was no power to run machines and no staff left to operate them. Patients on oxygen tanks suffocated when the last reserves ran out. Families stood in lobbies, shouting for answers, until soldiers came and cleared them out. No one has answers anymore, not the kind that matter. And then the whispers started. Insiders from Wall Street, people who used to live on numbers, claiming it wasn't just a crash. They say the dollar didn't just collapse, it was killed, pulled apart on purpose. A chain reaction started by sovereign debt, by years of printing money, by digital systems stretched too thin. Some whisper sabotage, foreign powers, cyber attacks, a deliberate takedown, timed for when our economy was weakest. The truth is, no one knows. And that's the worst part. In the silence left behind, rumors spread faster than fire, and people cling to whichever one feels less terrifying. In the neighborhoods closest to the station, barter is already law. I watched a man trade a carton of cigarettes for 3 gallons of water. A mechanic offered to fix a bicycle in exchange for a gallon of gas. And in one of the darker corners near the old bus depot, I saw people huddled around a man holding a rifle, selling ammunition by the handful. It's strange how quickly everyone remembers the oldest forms of trade when the newest ones vanish. Food, water, fuel, medicine, ammunition. The list is short, and everything else is noise. The radio dial is empty except for me and a handful of others scattered across the states. Sometimes I catch voices late at night, men and women clinging to weak signals, telling stories of their towns burning, of supermarkets stripped bare, of soldiers abandoning their posts. Once in a while, there's a burst of static where someone used to be, and then they're gone. That's how fast this world is shrinking. Pockets of voices in a storm of silence. I'm running low on fuel here, but not yet empty. I'll stay on until the generator dies. If you're listening out there, remember this. The system was never stronger than our belief in it, and belief vanished overnight. We've stepped backward into a world where survival depends not on money, not on credit, not on screens, but on what you can hold, defend, and share. Civilization isn't gone, not yet, but it's staggering, like a boxer at the edge of the ring. One more blow, and it's lights out. This is Jake Sinclair on 104.6 FM, holding the line as long as I can. If you can hear me, then you're still here, and that means we're not finished. Not yet. The air tonight feels heavier than usual, damp with the smell of smoke and something sour, like rotting food. It drifts in through the cracked window of the station, carried from the south side of the city where I know buildings are still burning. They say fire spreads faster when no one's around to put it out, and I can tell you it's true. A week ago, one small blaze would have brought sirens from every direction. Now flames can chew through entire blocks without anyone lifting a hose. I watch them from up here sometimes, the orange glow bouncing off the clouds, and I wonder if that's how the fall of Rome looked. People watching the skyline flicker as their world went dark, helpless to stop it. I've heard reports that the National Guard set up checkpoints on the highways leading out of Columbus, but I haven't seen them myself. People who tried to leave say the soldiers aren't letting anyone through unless they can prove they have fuel, food, or some kind of strategic resource, which is a fancy way of saying, if you're not useful, you're not going anywhere. There's talk that some of those checkpoints aren't even guard anymore, just armed groups using uniforms they stole, taking what they want. Hard to know what's real when no one has news feeds or cell service to confirm anything. The line between rumor and truth is a blur now. Yesterday, I walked 2 miles into the city toward Broad Street, just to see for myself what people were whispering about. The grocery stores were stripped bare days ago, but now even the warehouses behind them are gutted. Pallets overturned, cans scattered on the pavement, empty crates stacked like barricades. And there were people everywhere, but they weren't shopping or looting. They were sitting. Families sitting on sidewalks with empty shopping bags, as if waiting for someone to restock the shelves, still clinging to the hope that a truck might roll in. They looked broken, eyes dull, clothes dirty from sleeping on concrete. A woman was holding her son. He couldn't have been more than 7, whispering in his ear like she was telling him a bedtime story, even though his face was pale and sunken. The boy didn't move. I didn't stop to see if he was breathing. One man pulled me aside and asked if I knew where to find antibiotics. He offered me his wedding ring, gold band still polished from years of care. I didn't have anything for him. I can still see the look on his face when I shook my head, like I'd confirmed that everything he believed in had died right there on the sidewalk. That's what the collapse really looks like. Not just empty shelves, not just dark banks, but a father holding out the last symbol of his old life in exchange for the hope his child might live, and finding nothing in return. A contact of mine, a retired economics professor who used to teach at Ohio State, managed to get a message through on shortwave. He says what we're living through was inevitable. Too much debt, too much printing, too much faith in numbers no one could ever repay. He called it a slow-motion avalanche, building for decades. His exact words were, "We built an empire on sand, and the tide finally came in." He doesn't think this is something we can bounce back from in months or even years. He says the very foundation of global trade has cracked. Currencies mean nothing when trust is gone. Every nation is turning inward now, closing borders, hoarding what they can. The dollar's fall wasn't just America's end. It was the trigger that pulled the rest of the world down with it. And I've heard stranger things too. Whispers that certain powerful groups planned for this, that they've been stockpiling for years, waiting for the collapse so they could rise from the rubble. Secret bunkers, fortified estates, guarded farms hidden away while the rest of us scramble for scraps. Maybe it's paranoia, or maybe it's the truth. Either way, it doesn't change what's happening on the streets right now. Out here, nobody's waiting for billionaires or governments to save them. They're just trying to get through one more night without starving or freezing. Barter markets are popping up everywhere. Behind the church on 4th Avenue, I saw people laying out blankets covered with whatever they had. Batteries, lighters, jars of peanut butter, half-empty propane tanks. A man was offering a single gallon of clean water for a pair of shoes. Another had a small bottle of painkillers and was auctioning them pill by pill. No one uses paper bills anymore. I saw a crumpled $20 note on the ground, and no one even bothered to pick it up. It was just trash. And that's what shocks me most, even more than the violence, the speed at which everyone adapted. A week ago, money was life. Now it's nothing. I don't know how much longer the generator can keep running. Fuel is gold now, and I don't have much left. But as long as there's power in these wires, I'll keep sending this out. Maybe it reaches a handful of people clinging to radios in dark rooms. Maybe it doesn't reach anyone. But I have to try. Because silence is worse than the truth. Silence means we're already gone. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. If you can hear me, remember this. No one's coming to fix it. Not tomorrow. Not next week. What you do now, how you trade, how you protect, how you endure, that's the only thing that matters. Stay alive. That's all that counts. The streets tonight are louder than they've been in days, but not with engines or music. It's the sound of shouting, of boots on pavement, of glass shattering. I can hear it even from the studio, though I've barred the doors and covered the windows with blankets to keep the light from spilling out. Every few minutes there's another crack of a rifle or a shotgun echoing down the blocks, followed by a silence so sharp it presses against your skin. People are fighting now, not for luxuries, not even for money, but for bread, for water, for the smallest scraps of survival. Earlier today, I took a short walk out to the corner of Livingston Avenue just to see how far the collapse has stretched. What I saw there is still burned into my mind. Dozens of people clustered around a delivery truck that had broken down in the middle of the street. It must have been hauling food before everything froze, because the doors on the back had been pried open. I watched a man dive headfirst into the trailer, his legs kicking wildly as he tried to drag out boxes. Others swarmed him, pulling at the cargo, ripping it apart right there in the road. Some fought over sacks of flour. Others tore into boxes of cereal with their bare hands, shoving fistfuls into their mouths. By the time I turned back toward the station, the truck had tipped onto its side, and the crowd was ripping through the seats in the cab, searching for anything else worth taking. It wasn't looting anymore. It was feeding. I heard whispers from a contact near Cleveland, a ham operator who's been patching together transmissions as best he can. He said the Ohio National Guard has pulled back from most cities and is fortifying only a handful of key installations, water treatment plants, fuel depots, power substations, not for civilians, but for themselves. Their orders are to preserve what little infrastructure remains, even if it means leaving entire neighborhoods to starve. He said one unit tried to hand out rations to a crowd and was overrun. The rations were gone in minutes, and the soldiers didn't make it out alive. Now they don't bother trying. If you want to eat, you're on your own. I've been listening to faint transmissions coming out of New York, though they cut in and out with static. The last clear one described Manhattan going black. Every ATM, every bank, every store closed in unison, and when the power grid failed a day later, the city fell into chaos. Entire boroughs are cut off, bridges blocked by abandoned cars, tunnels filled with smoke. The voice on the radio said, People were tearing copper wiring from walls to trade it for food. The stock exchange building is dark, a hollow monument to a world that doesn't exist anymore. Imagine that. Wall Street reduced to rubble while men and women beg in the alleys for a can of beans. The rumors are spreading faster than the news ever did. Some say China and Russia pulled the final thread, dumping dollars in secret, triggering the collapse to cripple us. Others swear it was hackers, infiltrating the payment networks until everything froze. Still others mutter about elites who planned this decades ago, building bunkers and hiding while the rest of us choke in the ruins. I don't know which is true, and maybe it doesn't matter. The result is the same. No banks, no trade, no safety net. Just us, clawing at the bones of what's left. A man came by the station this afternoon, desperate. He said he'd been walking since Dayton, carrying his daughter on his back. She was too weak to walk, her lips cracked from thirst. He offered me a silver coin, heavy and dull, something he said had been in his family for generations. He begged me to give him fuel for his lantern or food for his child. I had nothing to give, not enough to spare. He stood there for a long moment, looking at me through the barricaded glass, before turning away. I still hear her coughing in my head. That's the weight of this new world. Not just the hunger, but the helplessness. Barter is the only language left, and the rules of it are already brutal. Cigarettes are worth their weight in meat. Alcohol is liquid currency, traded for medicine or bullets. Batteries might as well be gold. A neighbor told me he traded a single bottle of clean water for half a tank of gas, then used the gas to get as far away from the city as he could. He said he drove until the road was jammed with abandoned cars, and then walked into the woods, hoping he could fish or hunt. I don't know if I'll hear from him again. Maybe he made it. Maybe he didn't. Every day feels heavier than the last. Not because of the hunger or the cold, though both are spreading, but because of the silence from those who used to lead. Washington is gone quiet. No addresses, no plans, no reassurances. Just the sound of empty air where leadership used to be. And that silence tells us more than any speech could. We're on our own now. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. If you can hear my voice, know this. The world we knew isn't coming back. Not the way it was. We are past the point of waiting for rescue. All we can do now is build something out of the ashes, with whatever scraps we can hold on to. Stay alert. Stay together if you can. And above all, survive. It's colder tonight than it should be for August. Or maybe it just feels that way because the heat has gone out of the city. Without power, the concrete and steel lose their warmth faster than you'd think, and the nights settle in with a chill that bites at your skin, even in midsummer. I've got 3 layers on, sitting here by the mic, and still I shiver when the wind sneaks through the cracks in the windows. Outside, I can hear dogs barking in the distance, wild packs now that their owners can't feed them. Every night their numbers seem bigger, their cries sharper, more desperate. Hunger changes everything, not just for people. I tried to sleep earlier, but the sound of voices carried in from down the street. A crowd had gathered in the parking lot of the old strip mall, where someone had set up a fire barrel and hung a sign scrawled on cardboard, "Trade only." I went close enough to watch without being seen. People were bringing what they had, cans, flashlights, rope, even tools stolen from garages, and laying them out on blankets. A woman stood there with a basket of eggs from chickens she must have kept hidden in her yard. She traded one egg for a bundle of matches, another for a pair of socks. A kid no older than 16 offered half a gallon of gas in a plastic jug for a loaf of bread, and after a few tense minutes, someone handed it over. No money changed hands. The paper bills stayed stuffed in pockets, worthless as leaves. It felt older than time, watching people go back to barter, back to the way things were before any of us trusted in banks or cards or the endless glow of numbers on screens. But even there, even among neighbors, I saw the cracks widening. A man tried to steal a jar of peanut butter, slipping it under his coat, and when he was caught, they didn't call police, because there are no police anymore. They dragged him into the alley and beat him until he couldn't stand. When they left him there, I saw him crawl, blood running down his face, and I thought about how quickly mercy has vanished. People aren't cruel for the sake of cruelty. They're cruel because fear tells them they have no choice. News, if you can call it that, filters in through faint transmissions on shortwave and whispers from travelers who pass through. Detroit is burning, whole blocks abandoned to fire because no one has water to stop it. Chicago has split into zones, each controlled by armed groups who demand tribute in food and supplies. New York has gone silent entirely, at least from the frequencies I've been scanning. Washington broadcasts nothing but an empty loop telling people to remain calm, to shelter in place, as if repeating the lie enough times will make it true. A contact of mine who used to work in finance told me something that makes my stomach turn. He said this collapse wasn't sudden. He said there were warnings for months, years even, that the dollar was rotting from the inside. Too much debt, too much manipulation, too much blind trust. He said people in the know pulled their assets out long before the rest of us even smelled smoke. They had bunkers ready, farms stocked, land hidden away. And we, ordinary people, were left holding the match when the whole thing caught fire. He told me it wasn't just bad luck. It was the inevitable end of a system designed to break us when it failed. I don't know if that's true, but looking out at the streets tonight, I can't argue with the outcome. I've been thinking a lot about what still holds value. A week ago, people would have laughed if you told them a gallon of water was worth more than a diamond. But tonight, if you held them both in your hands, the water could save a life, and the diamond would sit useless, shining faintly in the dark. Families now measure wealth by how many cans of beans they've hidden away, how many gallons of gas they've siphoned into barrels, how many candles they've kept dry. Old radios, the kind that run on batteries, are worth more than any smartphone. It's almost funny if you can step outside the fear for a second. The world flipped upside down, and the things we tossed in attics or garages became the new gold. I keep telling myself to hold on to hope, but it's hard when you see the changes in people, the way they look at each other now, sizing up not as neighbors, but as competitors for the same shrinking scraps. You can feel the tension in every glance, like everyone's waiting for someone else to snap first. And yet, there are small moments too, where humanity refuses to die. Yesterday, I saw a man share half of his bread with a woman sitting alone on the curb. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just gave it to her and walked away. No speech, no reason. Just a quiet act in the middle of all this madness. That's what I cling to, that even when the systems are gone, when the lights are out, there's still some part of us that remembers kindness. I'll keep speaking as long as the generator has fuel, as long as this microphone carries my voice into the dark. Maybe no one's listening. Maybe only a handful of you out there are clutching your radios, hearing me through the static. But if you are, remember, survival isn't just about food or water. It's about holding on to the pieces of yourself that make you human. If we lose that, then the collapse has already won. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. Stay awake, stay alive, and don't forget who you are. It's just after midnight now. I know because I've been watching the second hand on my wristwatch crawl, ticking louder in the silence than it ever did when the world still had noise to drown it out. I keep winding this thing every morning, the old habit of routine holding me steady. It's one of the last pieces of order I've got left. The city outside the studio feels like it's holding its breath. No cars, no trains, just the occasional crack of wood splitting when someone breaks into another boarded-up shop. Every once in a while, there's a scream that cuts through the night, quick and sharp. Then silence again, like the darkness swallowed it whole. Today, I walked north along Parsons Avenue, not too far, just far enough to see what's happening on the ground. The gas station there, an old BP, was torn apart. Pumps ripped open, wires hanging like veins, concrete scorched from fire. People were clustered in the lot, burning trash in a metal drum. They had scavenged everything that wasn't bolted down. Signs, tires, even the rubber mats from inside the store. One man was sitting in a lawn chair, staring at an empty bag of chips as if it might magically refill. Around his neck hung a dozen lighters strung together like trophies. He must have been trading them one by one, because I saw him hand one to a boy in exchange for half a bottle of water. The boy held that bottle like it was treasure, clutching it to his chest. And that's where we are now. Water, food, fire. The three pillars of survival. Everything else, the houses, the screens, the money, it's all just shells without those three. A woman stopped me on the street and asked if I knew where she could find formula for her baby. She said she'd give me her car, keys in hand, for just one can. I told her I didn't know. The look on her face when she realized I was telling the truth, that hollow, desperate look, is something I'll never forget. She kept walking, the baby in her arms crying softly, and I stood there useless, feeling like I'd already failed. I've heard whispers on shortwave that the government is still meeting somewhere underground, somewhere safe. They say leaders are locked away in bunkers, making plans, deciding who gets saved and who doesn't. I don't know if that's true, and it doesn't matter anymore. Whatever orders they give, they won't reach us. The systems that carried their words, television, internet, cell towers, are already gone or dying. Here on the ground, leadership has dissolved. In some neighborhoods, self-appointed militias have taken over, men with guns claiming blocks as if they were kings. In others, small groups are holding on, trying to share food, ration water, keep order. Two worlds living side by side, the ruthless and the desperate. A man I know, an old friend from college, used to work at a regional bank. He told me once that everything depended on trust, not the kind of trust between people, but the trust that the system would honor its promises. He said money only worked because everyone agreed to pretend it had value. Break that agreement, and it all crumbles. That's exactly what happened. One broken promise too many, and the whole tower fell. Now people don't trust anything. Not banks, not leaders, not even each other. They only trust what they can hold in their hands, what they can trade, what they can eat. I've been keeping a list in my notebook of what I've seen traded in the last few days. It's strange, what rises to the top. A can of beans for 2 candles. A pack of cigarettes for a gallon of gas. 3 bullets for a loaf of bread. A single painkiller, just 1 pill for half a chicken. No one cares about the old prices anymore. The old math is dead. everything is measured in survival now. Every deal is a lifeline or a knife. Out on the east side, I heard there's a man who set up a community kitchen, cooking what food he could find and handing it out to anyone who brought something useful. Firewood, blankets, medicine. People whispered about it like it was a miracle. But miracles don't last. Word got around, and last night, armed men showed up. They took the food, beat the man, and left the rest to starve. Hope is fragile now, and it gets crushed quick under boots. But still, I see flickers. I saw a group of kids today using chalk to draw on the cracked pavement, pictures of houses and trees and the sun. They laughed. Real laughter. The kind I haven't heard since the crash. For a moment, I almost forgot the hunger, the fear, the cold. I almost remembered what it felt like to be alive in the old world. And that's why I keep speaking, why I keep this station alive, even if the fuel runs out tomorrow. Because maybe, somewhere out there, someone needs to hear a human voice reminding them they're not alone. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. Maybe fire, maybe silence, maybe something worse. But for tonight, you're still here, and so am I. The city smells different now. Not like exhaust or fast food or freshly cut grass. It's the smell of rot, of trash piling in the streets, of fires smoldering for days because no one comes to put them out. When I stepped outside earlier, the air carried it thick, burnt plastic mixed with spoiled food and the metallic tang of blood that clings to the pavement where fights have broken out. It's a smell you can't shake. It follows you into buildings, sticks to your clothes, crawls up your throat until you can almost taste it. That's what the fall of a civilization smells like. Not dust and rubble, but decay. This morning, I walked down toward the arena, the place that used to hold concerts and games, a bright spot in the city. Now the parking lot has become a camp. Hundreds of people packed into tents and makeshift shelters built from tarps and plywood. At first glance, it looked like a community. People gathered together for safety, pooling their resources. But the longer I watched, the more I saw the cracks. Lines of people waiting for food that never arrived. Children crying while their parents argued over scraps. Men with bats and knives patrolling the edges, calling themselves security, but really just taking whatever they wanted. A fight broke out over a can of peaches, and the crowd swallowed it whole, fists and kicks raining down until the can split open and the juice soaked into the dirt. Not one peach was left. The strange thing is, the lights over the arena still flicker faintly at night. Some generator must still be running inside, maybe hooked to a backup line, maybe guarded by whoever's holed up in there. But the people outside never get a drop of it. They sit in the dark, staring at that faint glow, like moths circling a flame they can't reach. It's cruel, in a way. Proof that power still exists, but not for them. I passed by what used to be a pharmacy on the way back. The shelves were stripped, of course, but behind the counter the safe had been smashed open, pill bottles scattered everywhere. Most were empty, but a few still had tablets rattling inside. I watched a man scoop up a handful of pills, pour them into his pocket without even looking at the labels. Painkillers, blood pressure meds, antidepressants. He didn't care what they were. Out here, any pill is worth something. You can trade them for food, for batteries, for a ride out of town if you're lucky. Medicine has become a currency all its own. Word is spreading that Washington has gone dark for good. The last automated broadcast loop cut off sometime yesterday. People say the leadership has retreated fully underground, safe in bunkers carved into mountains, leaving us topside to tear each other apart. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I haven't heard a real government voice in days, and the silence feels louder every hour. From across the ocean, faint signals drift in through the static. London rioting, Paris under curfew, though no one enforces it. Germany declaring a temporary suspension of the euro, which everyone knows means collapse. In Asia, borders are sealed, trade routes frozen. A global freeze like the arteries of the world have clotted, and every limb is dying in slow motion. The dollar was the spine of it all, and when it snapped, the rest of the body fell limp. I saw something today that gave me pause, though. In an alley not far from here, a group of kids, maybe 12, 13, were building something. Not weapons, not traps, but a contraption of wood and bicycle wheels. A cart. They were fixing it up, laughing quietly as they worked, scavenging screws and bolts from a pile of junk. It wasn't much, just a rickety cart that might not last a mile, but it was something they were making with their hands, something to carry supplies or people when cars are useless. For a moment, it looked like the kind of determination that built cities in the first place. That spark is still there, buried under the hunger and the fear. The barter markets are shifting too. I've noticed candles becoming as valuable as bullets. People are terrified of the dark, not just because of what prowls in it, but because without light, you can't cook, you can't fix, you can't see what's coming. Matches, lighters, lantern oil, they're all rising fast. Some people even trade broken flashlights, hoping to fix them, hoping to squeeze out just a little more light from dead batteries. And water, always water, still reigns above all. I can't say how much longer I can keep this station alive. The generator is running low, and I've rationed the fuel so tight that some nights I sit in the dark, refusing to use even a drop for heat. My hands are cold now as I grip the mic, but I'll stay on the air as long as I can, because silence means we're finished. If you can hear me, you're still part of this world, and so am I. This is Jake Sinclair on 104.6 FM. The dollar is gone, the markets are dead, and the leaders have vanished underground. But here on the surface, we're still fighting to breathe. Don't let the silence win. The city feels emptier every morning, though the streets are still crowded. It's not the kind of crowded you'd recognize. No traffic jams, no rush hour throngs heading to work. It's crowds of wandering figures, hungry and lost, moving with no destination. They drift between boarded-up storefronts and burned-out houses, searching for anything left behind. And when they find something, a can, a half-broken tool, a gallon of dirty water, they cling to it like treasure. That's what passes for wealth now. Not cars, not houses, not bank accounts, just scraps. I walked along High Street at noon, keeping close to the shadows. The sun was harsh, but the silence was harsher. Shops once filled with people are gutted, their windows painted with ash and grime. At one intersection, a man had set up a crude stand, just a wooden table balanced on bricks, where he was laying out boxes of nails, fishing hooks, and spools of wire. People stopped to look, trading him tins of food, a few batteries, even shoes, nails, hooks, wire. That's where value has shifted. Tools that can build, repair, or protect. And watching that scene, I realized something. Our civilization hasn't vanished. It's just been stripped down to bone. But in other places, it's darker. Near the bus depot, I stumbled into a crowd. A mob was circling a woman, shouting, pushing, accusing her of hoarding bread. She clutched a bag to her chest, screaming that it was hers, that her children needed it. Someone grabbed the bag, and when it tore, stale crusts spilled onto the ground. The crowd dove, tearing at the bread with bare hands. The woman was left screaming in the dirt, her face swollen where fists had struck her. No one helped. They just chewed on the crumbs and walked away. That's what hunger does. It strips away the thin skin of order, the manners and courtesies, and reveals the raw need underneath. I saw neighbors once friendly with each other, now standing guard with pipes and knives at the edges of their blocks, daring anyone to step closer. The word community is turning into tribe. And tribes don't share with outsiders. I caught fragments on shortwave today, faint but clear enough to make out. Washington, D.C. has fallen silent, completely. No automated loops, no government channels, nothing. A voice from Pennsylvania said the president is in hiding, somewhere underground, but the government above ground has ceased to function, Congress scattered, courts abandoned. The country isn't just leaderless, it's lawless. And it isn't just here. London's signals describe riots burning through the city center, Parliament overrun, banks gutted like ours. From Paris, voices whisper that food convoys are being hijacked before they leave the depots, armed groups selling the cargo back at knife point. Germany's broadcasts cut in and out, but one phrase keeps repeating: currency suspension indefinite. That means collapse. Everywhere. The dollar didn't just die, it dragged the whole global body with it into the grave. People are starting to whisper about replacements. Digital currencies, government issued, controlled directly by whoever still holds power underground. Chips or cards tied to identity, usable only with approval. I don't know if that's truth or paranoia, but it doesn't matter. Out here, no one trusts promises anymore. Trust is gone, and without trust, money is just paper, numbers are just pixels, and leaders are just ghosts hiding in bunkers. Today, I found myself staring at a crumpled $20 bill lying in the gutter. Once, I would have bent down without thinking, picked it up, folded it into my wallet. This time, I stepped over it. I didn't even pause. It wasn't worth the weight of carrying. That's the part that haunts me. The way the mind changes. How fast old habits die when survival takes over. Still, sparks remain. I saw two boys hauling buckets of water from the river, straining under the weight, and when one stumbled, the other stopped, set down his own load, and helped him up. They laughed, just for a second, before trudging on. That laugh, it cut through the ash, the hunger, the noise of collapse. It reminded me that even in the ruins, humanity isn't gone. Not yet. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. The banks are tombs, the leaders are shadows, the dollar is dust. But we're still breathing, and if you're listening, so are you. Hold on. Don't let go. Survive one more day. That's all any of us can do. The sound of the city has changed again. A week ago, it was glass breaking and fires crackling. Now it's quieter, but not in a way that brings peace. It's the kind of quiet that makes you look over your shoulder every few seconds. People don't shout in the streets anymore unless they're desperate. They keep their voices low, their movements quick, like animals that know predators are near. You can walk a mile without hearing more than a cough or the scrape of shoes on pavement, and yet you know you're being watched. Hunger has turned everyone into both hunter and prey. I walked east earlier, toward the old rail yard. The trains haven't run since the grid went down, and the cars sit frozen on the tracks like metal skeletons. I thought maybe I'd find something left behind, but someone had been there long before me. Doors pried open, steel cut, wheels stripped. Some cars were burned, others painted with crude warnings. Stay out, no food, turn back. But then I found one car that had been turned into a shelter. A tarp covered the entrance, and inside I could hear voices, families huddled together, keeping warm with small fires built in metal buckets. Children's cries carried out through the tarp, muffled but unmistakable. They're living in there, inside hollow trains, because it's safer than the streets. Imagine that. Further along, I saw a new kind of marketplace. Not food, not water, not fuel, information. A man was standing at the corner of an intersection, offering news for trade. For a few batteries, he'd tell you which neighborhood still had wells running. For a can of beans, he'd whisper where the National Guard had pulled back, leaving stores unguarded. And for something bigger, ammunition, medicine, he'd tell you what he called government secrets. Rumors about new currencies, about rationing systems being tested in hidden towns. I don't know how much of what he said was true, but people lined up anyway. When trust in money dies, even rumors can be a currency. I heard another signal today, faint but chilling. It came from what sounded like a military band, but the voice didn't feel like leadership. It was too calm, too detached. It said, "This is not a collapse. This is a reset." That was it. Over and over, like a loop. A reset. Reset for who? Not for us. Not for the ones sleeping in train cars and fighting over scraps of bread. If someone out there is calling this a reset, they're safe behind steel doors, far from the rot we're living in. And still, the whispers grow. A digital currency. A new system tied to identification. Ration cards that only work if you're registered. Some call it salvation. Others call it the mark of control. Either way, it doesn't matter here. Out here, no one is lining up for ration cards. They're fighting for eggs, for water, for shoes with intact soles. They're not thinking about what comes next. They're thinking about surviving the next dawn. I saw something that stopped me cold on my way back. On the corner of Main, two men were fighting over a sack. Their voices carried sharp and raw, fists swinging. When one went down, the other grabbed the sack and ran. The man on the ground lay there, coughing, clutching at his side. A boy, he couldn't have been more than 10, walked over, knelt down, and gave him half of a biscuit he had wrapped in paper. Just half. Then the boy walked away without a word. The man ate it slowly, crumbs falling into the dirt. That image. A child with nothing giving away the only thing he had. It's the kind of thing that keeps me from losing whatever hope I've got left. The barter lists are shifting again. Today I heard someone trade a single candle for 3 rounds of ammunition. Not long ago, bullets would have outweighed candles. Now, people are learning the dark is its own enemy. Matches are worth more than knives. And water filters, the simple ones you used to find at camping stores, are priceless. People fight for them more than they fight for bread. It makes sense. Bread keeps you alive for a day. Water keeps you alive for weeks. I keep looking at the stacks of old dollar bills that lie scattered in gutters and alleys. No one touches them anymore. They're soaked in rain, plastered to the pavement, drifting in the wind like trash. And yet, sometimes I catch someone bending down to pick one up, staring at it like they're holding a ghost. A memory of a time when that scrap of paper meant food, safety, stability. Some still can't believe it's gone. Some still think it might come back, but it won't. The dollar died, and with it, the world we built around it. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. If you can hear me, then you're still standing in the ruins with me. Remember this, the new currency isn't money, it's time. Every hour you endure, every night you survive, every dawn you see, that's your wealth now. Hold on to it. don't let it slip away. The night feels heavier than the last, and I don't think it's just the cold creeping in through the cracks of the studio walls. It's the weight of the city pressing down, the way it groans under the strain of collapse. The silence between gunshots is longer now, but that doesn't mean peace. It just means people are saving their bullets, holding them tight like coins, waiting for the moment they matter most. Ammunition has become one of the highest currencies, and everyone knows it. I saw a man trade a box of 20 rounds for an entire sack of rice earlier today. Both sides thought they'd won. That's the world we live in now. Survival is a negotiation with no rules. I made my way toward German Village this afternoon. The streets there used to be lined with restaurants, shops, cozy little places that smelled like bread and coffee. Now the windows are shattered, and the brick facades are painted with messages scrawled in charcoal. Keep out. Nothing left. Stay away. I passed one house where a group of neighbors had built a barricade across the street with overturned cars, furniture, even old refrigerators. They'd spray-painted the words, "Block closed," in big black letters. Behind the barricade, I could hear voices, smell smoke from cooking fires. They've walled themselves in, turned the street into their own little fort. That's how people live now, splintered into small islands, guarding their scraps from anyone outside. I overheard two men arguing near the barricade. One had a handful of medicine bottles, the other a box of shotgun shells. They were trying to work out a trade, but they couldn't agree. The man with the pills wanted all the shells. The man with the shells wanted half the pills. Their voices rose, sharper and sharper, until both had their weapons drawn. In the end, neither of them walked away with what they wanted. The crowd scattered, and the deal died in the dirt. That's the problem when trust is gone. You can't trade without risking blood. On the shortwave today, I caught a faint broadcast, maybe from Pittsburgh. The voice was ragged but clear enough to make out. The banks are gone, the markets are gone, and the hospitals are war zones. What you carry is what you own. He said martial law had failed there, that even the soldiers had joined the scramble. He spoke of bodies piled outside supermarkets, families fighting over rotten produce, and police cars left abandoned in the streets. Doors wide open, radios silent. He ended with a warning that's been echoing in my head ever since. This isn't chaos. This is the new order. I don't know if he's right, but I can feel the truth of it in my bones. Chaos is temporary, but this is settling in. The barter systems, the fortified blocks, the camps in parking lots, they're becoming permanent. People are adapting to hunger the way they adapted to credit cards once. The collapse isn't a storm to be waited out. It's the new climate. I walked past a burned-out grocery store on my way back to the station. The shelves were nothing but twisted metal, ash still clinging to the walls. In the middle of the floor, I saw something strange. Stacks of money, piled like kindling. Someone had tried to use dollar bills as fuel for fire, but most of them just smoldered and went out. They don't burn well. That's the irony. The thing that once burned holes in our pockets can't even burn long enough to warm our hands. But still, there are glimpses of humanity. At the edge of the rail yard, I saw a small group of people gathered around an old woman. She was teaching them how to bake flatbread using nothing but flour, water, and a skillet over a fire. They listened closely, nodding, copying her movements. She laughed softly when one of them burned his bread, and for a moment it looked like a lesson from another time, another world. That's what survival really is. Not just trading or fighting, but remembering how to live without the machines we leaned on for so long. Every day feels longer, but every day survived is proof we're not finished. This is Jake Sinclair, 104.6 FM. The dollar is dead, but we are not. If you're listening, you still have breath in your lungs and a heartbeat in your chest. Guard them, trade wisely, trust cautiously, and never forget, humanity is worth more than any currency that ever existed. The strange thing is, I can't shake this feeling that we're not just watching things fall apart. We're being guided into it. Every collapse has a rhythm, a progression. First it's subtle, then it's sharp. Then it feels like everything was inevitable all along. And now, after weeks of flickering lights, half-dead grids, and sudden silences from places that should never go quiet, we've landed here, in this uneasy space where nothing works, but no one dares admit why. I've been told, through channels I probably shouldn't name, that there were whispers inside Fort Meade. People working the cyber command units were ordered to shut down logs, erase traces, bury evidence of what actually started this. Some say it wasn't a foreign attack at all. Some say it was us, turning our own lights off to test something, to flush something out, to reset a system too tangled to untangle. That maybe we didn't lose control, it was taken. But outside those theories, the streets tell a harsher truth. I keep hearing from towns where the grocery freezers are thawing out into rivers of spoiled meat, where gas stations have turned into brawling pits with people swinging wrenches over a gallon. Some neighborhoods still try to hold it together. Barbecues in the dark, candle-lit prayer circles, neighbors dragging extension cords from a generator like a lifeline. And yet, just a few blocks away, you'll find doors kicked in, apartments stripped bare, or families vanishing without leaving a trace. A caller from Atlanta, Marcus, I think his name was, told me his wife left for insulin 2 days ago and never came back. The pharmacy she was heading toward had its windows shattered, shelves emptied, and no one could say if she ever made it inside. He said the city feels like a mouth that swallowed her whole, and all he can do is wait by the radio, hoping someone will spit her back out. I didn't know what to say to him except, I'm listening. The dangerous part is how quickly we've stopped being surprised. A week ago, hearing about riots in Chicago or power stations sabotaged in Texas would have shaken us. Now it's just another entry in a growing list of breakdowns. That numbness, it scares me more than the chaos. Because numb people stop resisting. They start accepting. There are rumors that safe zones are being established, places with working grids, protected perimeters, guarded by men with no insignias on their uniforms. No one can say if they're run by the government, private contractors, or something in between. But I have a hunch, if you walk through those gates, you don't walk back out. You're listening to the last frequency still speaking freely. And if you're out there, alone, cut off, trying to hold your home together, know this. You're not crazy for thinking something bigger is moving behind all of this. You're not crazy for noticing the silence, for questioning the stories. They want you in the dark, not just literally, but mentally. Stay awake. Stay aware. Stay alive. This is 99.3 FM. I'll keep talking as long as I can.